The morning sun painted golden streaks across the hospital corridors as Prince William walked slowly toward the children's ward. His footsteps echoed softly against the polished floors, each step carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken worries. Today was different from his usual royal visits. Today, he wasn't just representing the crown or fulfilling a duty. Today, he was a father trying to hold himself together. Kate had been by his side through everything, but this morning she had stayed behind with their own children. The decision hadn't been easy. They both knew that visiting sick children required emotional strength, and with recent family struggles weighing heavily on their hearts, they questioned whether they could offer the comfort these young patients needed. The ward was filled with the gentle sounds of morning routines. Nurses moved quietly between rooms, checking on their young patients. Some children sat in wheelchairs by the windows, watching the world outside with eyes that held both innocence and wisdom beyond their years. Others lay in beds surrounded by colorful drawings and get-well cards from strangers who cared enough to send hope through the mail. William paused outside the first room. Through the glass window, he could see a little girl, no more than 7 years old, carefully arranging her stuffed animals on the bedside table. Her head was covered with a bright pink scarf, and despite the tubes connected to her small arm, she hummed a cheerful tune. The sight hit him harder than he expected. His own daughter Charlotte was around the same age, and the thought of any child facing such challenges made his chest tighten. The hospital staff had briefed him about each patient, but no amount of preparation could ready a parent's heart for these moments. As he entered the room, the little girl looked up with bright eyes that seemed to hold no trace of self-pity or sadness. Instead, she smiled widely, as if a prince visiting her was the most natural thing in the world. "Are you really a prince?" she asked with genuine curiosity, tilting her head to one side. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying the kind of directness that only children possess. William found himself smiling for the first time that day. "I am," he replied, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "But I think you might be the real royalty here. This room looks like a palace with all these beautiful drawings." The walls were indeed covered with artwork from other children, fellow patients who had come and gone, leaving behind pieces of their courage and creativity. The little girl, whose name was Emma, began explaining each drawing with the enthusiasm of a museum curator. She told him about the rainbow that meant hope, the butterfly that represented transformation, and the heart that symbolized all the love from people she had never met. As William listened, he realized something profound was happening. He had come here thinking he would be the one offering comfort and strength. Instead, this brave child was teaching him about resilience and finding joy in the smallest moments. Her laughter was infectious, and soon he found himself genuinely engaged in her stories about the hospital adventures and the friends she had made among the staff and other patients. The morning continued with visits to other rooms. Each child had a unique story, yet they all shared something remarkable. Despite their circumstances, they possessed an ability to find wonder in simple things. A boy named Marcus showed William his collection of superhero figurines, explaining how each hero had special powers that reminded him of the doctors and nurses who took care of him. Another child, Sarah, was learning to paint with her left hand after surgery on her right arm, and she proudly displayed her colorful masterpieces with more pride than any gallery artist. With each interaction, William felt layers of his own worries beginning to shift. The weight he had carried into the hospital that morning wasn't disappearing, but it was being joined by something else. These children were showing him that strength didn't always look like what he expected. Sometimes it looked like a 7-year-old girl arranging stuffed animals while facing treatments that would challenge most adults. The hospital's playroom was buzzing with activity when William arrived. For the group session, children of various ages were engaged in different activities. Some were building with blocks, others were reading books, and a group in the corner was working on a large puzzle together. The room felt alive with the kind of energy that only children can create, even in the most unlikely circumstances. As he joined the puzzle group, William found himself thinking about his own family. The challenges they faced seemed different now, not smaller or less important, but viewed through a new lens. These children dealt with uncertainty every day, yet they still laughed, still played, still hoped. They had taught him something about perspective that no royal training or life experience had prepared him for. The morning was drawing to a close when William received a message from Kate. She was asking how the visit was, going and whether he was okay. He paused before responding, looking around the room at all these incredible young people who had unknowingly become his teachers for the day. How could he explain that he had come here to give comfort, but was leaving with far more than he had brought? As he prepared to leave, the children gathered around him. They didn't ask for anything special or treat him differently because of his title. To them, he was simply a visitor who had spent time listening to their stories and sharing in their world for a few hours. The simplicity of their acceptance touched something deep within him. Walking back through those same hospital corridors, William's footsteps carried a different rhythm. The weight was still there, but it was accompanied by something new. He had witnessed courage in its purest form, seen joy persist in the face of adversity, and learned that sometimes the greatest teachers come in the smallest packages. The children had given him a gift he hadn't expected to receive, and he knew that Kate needed to hear about everything he had experienced. Kate stood by the kitchen window, watching raindrops race down the glass as she waited for William to return from the hospital. Their children were upstairs taking their afternoon nap, and the house felt unusually quiet. She had spent the morning trying to keep busy, but her thoughts kept drifting to the conversation they had shared the night before about the challenges their family was facing. The weight of public expectations, combined with recent health scares within the royal family, had created a tension that seemed to follow them everywhere. They had always prided themselves on maintaining a balance between their public duties and private family life, but lately, that balance felt increasingly difficult to maintain. Every decision seemed to carry consequences that rippled far beyond their immediate family. When she heard William's car in the driveway, Kate felt her heart quicken slightly. She could usually read his mood from the way he walked through the door, and today she was particularly attentive to those subtle signs. As he entered the kitchen, she noticed something different in his expression. There was still heaviness there, but something else too, something she couldn't quite identify. "How did it go?" she asked softly, setting down the tea she had been nervously stirring for the past 10 minutes. William paused for a moment, as if trying to find the right words to capture his experience. "Kate, I need to tell you about today," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of emotion that made her step closer to him. He began describing his morning at the hospital, starting with his initial hesitation and nervousness. As he spoke about each child he had met, Kate could see the impact they had made on him. His eyes lit up when he described Emma's artwork and Marcus's superhero collection. When he talked about Sarah learning to paint with her other hand, his voice caught slightly with admiration. Kate listened intently, feeling her own emotions shift as William shared the details of his visit. She could picture each scene he described, and more importantly, she could see how profoundly the experience had affected him. This wasn't just another royal engagement for him. This had been something deeply personal and transformative. "They taught me something I didn't expect to learn," William continued, running his hand through his hair in the way he did when he was processing something significant. "These children face uncertainty every single day, yet they still find reasons to smile, to hope, to keep going. They don't have the luxury of dwelling on problems that might happen. They focus on what's right in front of them." Kate felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she understood what he was really saying. For weeks they had been consumed with worries about the future, about decisions they needed to make, about challenges that might arise. The children at the hospital had reminded William about the power of living in the present moment. "I kept thinking about our own children," William said, his voice growing softer. "Charlotte is the same age as Emma, and I watched this little girl face each day with such courage. It made me realize that we've been so focused on protecting our family from potential problems that we might be missing the joy that's right in front of us." The kitchen fell silent except for the gentle sound of rain against the windows. Kate moved closer to William, reaching out to take his hands in hers. She could feel the slight tremor in his fingers, a sign of the emotional intensity he was experiencing. "I want you to go with me next week," William said suddenly, looking directly into her eyes. "I want you to meet these children. I want you to see what I saw today." Kate nodded without hesitation. She could see that this wasn't just about a hospital visit for William. This was about rediscovering something they had lost in the midst of their recent struggles. The children had reminded him about resilience, about finding strength in unexpected places, and about the importance of hope even in difficult circumstances. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about the visit in detail. William shared stories about each child's personality, their dreams, and their incredible attitudes toward their treatments. Kate found herself laughing at some of the funny things the children had said, and feeling moved by their wisdom and maturity. As evening approached, their own children woke from their naps and joined them in the kitchen. George immediately climbed onto William's lap, while Charlotte snuggled against Kate's side. Louis toddled around the kitchen, chattering happily to himself as he played with his toys. Watching their children, Kate and William both felt a renewed sense of perspective. Their family challenges hadn't disappeared, but they seemed more manageable somehow. The children at the hospital had shown William that strength could be found in the most unexpected places, and that hope was often a choice rather than a circumstance. "You know what struck me most?" William said as they prepared dinner together. "Those children didn't ask for anything from me. They didn't need me to fix their problems or make their situations better. They just wanted someone to listen to their stories and share in their world for a little while." Kate paused in her dinner preparations, considering the deeper meaning of his observation. So often, they felt the pressure to solve problems, to make everything better for everyone around them. The children had taught William that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone is simply your presence and attention. That evening, as they tucked their own children into bed, both Kate and William felt a subtle but significant shift in their perspective. The bedtime routine felt more precious somehow, each hug lasting a little longer, each goodnight kiss carrying a little more meaning. Later, as they sat together in their living room, Kate could see that William was still processing the day's experiences. She knew that the visit had changed something fundamental in his approach to their current challenges. The children's courage and optimism had reminded him that strength often comes from focusing on what you can control, rather than worrying about what you cannot. "I feel like I understand something better now," William said quietly as they prepared for bed. "Those children showed me that resilience isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing hope even when you're afraid." The week passed quickly, filled with the usual royal duties and family responsibilities. But something had changed in the household's atmosphere. William carried himself differently, with a lightness that hadn't been there before his hospital visit. Kate noticed how he lingered longer during their children's bedtime stories and seemed more present during their family meals. When the day arrived for their joint visit to the hospital, Kate felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She had heard so much about these remarkable children from William that she felt as though she already knew them. Yet she also understood that meeting them in person would be an entirely different experience. The drive to the hospital was quieter than usual. Both Kate and William seemed lost in their own thoughts, preparing themselves emotionally for what lay ahead. Kate found herself thinking about her own children, and how fortunate they were to be healthy and carefree. She wondered how she would handle the emotions that were sure to surface when meeting children facing such serious health challenges. As they arrived at the hospital, Kate was struck by how different the building looked from what she had imagined. Despite being a place where children dealt with serious illnesses, the exterior was welcoming and colorful. Bright murals decorated the walls, and the gardens were filled with flowers and playground equipment designed for children with various mobility needs. The hospital staff greeted them warmly, and Kate could immediately sense the genuine care and dedication of everyone they met. These weren't just medical professionals doing their jobs. They were people who had clearly chosen to dedicate their lives to helping children through some of their most difficult times. Their first stop was Emma's room, the little girl who had made such an impression on William during his previous visit. Kate watched as Emma's face lit up when she saw William return, but the child's curiosity quickly shifted to the elegant woman beside him. "Is this your princess?" Emma asked with the directness that only children possess, causing both Kate and William to smile. "This is Kate," William replied. "And yes, she is a princess, but more importantly, she's my best friend." Kate felt her heart warm at his introduction. In that simple statement, he had captured something essential about their relationship that went beyond titles or public roles. As she sat beside Emma's bed, Kate was immediately struck by the child's bright spirit and engaging personality. Emma began showing Kate the same artwork that she had shared with William, but this time with new additions. She had drawn a picture specifically for Kate, featuring a woman in a blue dress standing next to a prince in a garden full of flowers. The detail and thought that had gone into the drawing was remarkable for such a young artist. "I drew this because William said you love gardens. Emma explained proudly, "And I made sure the flowers were all different colors because that makes everything more beautiful." Kate felt tears threatening to form as she studied the thoughtful gift. The innocence and generosity of this child, who was dealing with her own serious health challenges, was overwhelming. Here was a 7-year-old girl who had taken time to create something beautiful for a stranger, simply because she wanted to bring joy to someone else. As they moved through the ward, Kate met each of the children William had described. Marcus eagerly showed her his superhero collection, explaining how each character had taught him something about being brave. Sarah demonstrated her new painting technique, proudly displaying artwork that showed remarkable skill and creativity despite the challenges she faced with her recovering arm. But it was during their time in the playroom that Kate experienced the moment that would stay with her forever. A new patient, a boy named Tommy, who was about the same age as their son George, had been hesitant to join the group activities. He sat alone in a corner looking overwhelmed and frightened by his new surroundings. Kate noticed him immediately and felt her maternal instincts engage. She approached him slowly, sitting down on the floor beside him without saying anything at first. Sometimes, she had learned from her own children, the most comforting thing was simply having someone nearby who didn't expect anything from you. "I'm Kate," she said softly after a few minutes. "I see you're watching everyone else play. Sometimes it takes a while to feel ready to join in." Tommy looked up at her with eyes that held far too much worry for such a young face. "My mom had to go home to take care of my baby sister," he said quietly. "She said she'd be back, but I miss her." Kate's heart broke for this little boy who was trying to be brave in a scary situation. She thought about her own children and how difficult it would be for them to be away from home during a time when they needed comfort most. "It's okay to miss your mom," Kate said gently. "That means you love her very much. And you know what? She misses you too, and she's thinking about you right now." As they talked, other children gradually joined them on the floor. Before long, an impromptu story circle had formed, with Kate in the center sharing tales about brave children who found strength they didn't know they had. William watched from across the room, seeing his wife in her element, naturally connecting with these young patients in a way that brought comfort to both the children and their families. The stories Kate told weren't from books, but from her heart. She spoke about children who faced challenges with courage, who found friends in unexpected places, and who discovered that being brave didn't mean not being scared. It meant doing what you needed to do even when you were afraid. As the afternoon progressed, Kate found herself deeply moved by each interaction. These children possessed a wisdom and resilience that humbled her. They spoke about their treatments with matter-of-fact acceptance, supported each other through difficult days, and found joy in the smallest accomplishments. When it came time to leave, Kate realized that something fundamental had shifted in her understanding of strength and hope. Like William before her, she had come expecting to offer comfort to others but found herself receiving far more than she gave. Tommy, the quiet boy who had been hesitant to engage earlier, approached her as they prepared to go. He handed her a small drawing he had made during story time, a simple picture of 2 stick figures holding hands with the word, "Friends," written carefully underneath. "This is for you," he said shyly. "So you remember that we're friends now?" Kate accepted the drawing with hands that trembled slightly with emotion. The simple gesture from this brave little boy represented something profound about human connection and the power of presence during difficult times. The drive home from the hospital was filled with a thoughtful silence. Both Kate and William were processing the profound experiences they had shared throughout the day. Kate clutched Tommy's drawing in her hands, studying the simple but powerful message it contained. Every few minutes, one of them would start to speak, then pause, as if searching for words adequate to express what they were feeling. "Did you see how Tommy opened up during story time?" Kate finally said, her voice soft with emotion. "When we first arrived, he could barely look at anyone, and by the end, he was sharing his own stories with the other children." William nodded, remembering how he had watched the transformation happen gradually throughout the afternoon. "That's what these children do," he replied. "They show you that healing isn't just about medicine or treatments. Sometimes it's about connection and feeling understood." As they turned into their driveway, both of them felt the weight of returning to their own world after spending time in the children's remarkable universe. Their house looked the same, but something inside them had changed permanently. They had witnessed courage in its purest form and learned lessons about resilience that no amount of royal training could have taught them. Their own children rushed to greet them at the door, full of questions about where they had been and what they had done. George wanted to know if they had met any superheroes. Charlotte asked if they had seen any princesses, and Louis simply wanted to be lifted up for hugs and cuddles. "We met some real-life heroes today," Kate told them as they gathered in the living room. "Children who are incredibly brave and strong, even when they're facing difficult things." That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Kate and William found themselves talking about the children they had met as if they were old friends. They discussed Emma's latest artwork, Marcus's new superhero theories, and Sarah's improving painting skills. But it was Tommy who had made the deepest impression on Kate, just as Emma had touched William's heart during his first visit. "I keep thinking about what he said," Kate murmured as she stirred the pasta sauce, "about missing his mother but trying to be brave for his baby sister. He's carrying such a big responsibility for someone so young." William moved closer to her, understanding the emotional impact Tommy's situation had on her maternal heart. "He reminded me of George," he said quietly. "The way he tries to be the protective big brother, even when he's dealing with his own fears." After dinner, as they tucked their children into bed, both Kate and William felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for their family's health and togetherness. Charlotte's complaints about having to brush her teeth seemed less like a problem and more like a blessing. George's endless questions about why he couldn't stay up later felt like a precious reminder of childhood innocence. Even Louis's resistance to putting on his pajamas brought smiles instead of frustration. Later that evening, Kate and William sat together in their private study, surrounded by family photos and mementos from their years of marriage. The room felt like a sanctuary where they could process the day's experiences without the weight of public expectations or royal protocols. "I understand now why that first visit affected you so deeply," Kate said, curling up beside William on their comfortable sofa. "Those children don't just inspire you to be better. They change your entire perspective on what really matters." William wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer as they both reflected on the day. "When Emma showed you that drawing she made, I watched your face, and I could see the exact moment when everything shifted for you. It was the same feeling I had when she first showed me her artwork." Kate smiled, remembering the surge of emotion she had felt when Emma presented her with the carefully crafted picture. She put so much thought and love into something meant for a stranger. "It made me realize how often we complicate things that should be simple. Sometimes kindness really is as straightforward as taking time to create something beautiful for someone else." They talked deep into the evening about how the hospital visits had affected their approach to their own family challenges. The pressures and concerns that had seemed overwhelming just weeks ago now felt more manageable. The children had taught them that strength came not from having all the answers, but from facing uncertainty with hope and determination. "I want to do more than just visit," Kate said suddenly, an idea forming in her mind. "I want to find a way to really support these children and their families on an ongoing basis." William looked at her with understanding and admiration. He had been thinking along similar lines, but hadn't yet found the words to express his desire to deepen their involvement. "What did you have in mind?" Kate was quiet for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "I keep thinking about Tommy's situation. His mother having to choose between being with him and caring for his sister at home. There must be other families facing similar impossible choices. Maybe we could help create support systems that would allow families to stay together during treatment." The conversation continued as they began to envision ways they could use their position and resources to make a meaningful difference in the lives of families dealing with childhood illnesses. This wasn't about grand gestures or public recognition. It was about finding practical ways to address real needs they had witnessed firsthand. As the evening grew late, they found themselves looking through photo albums, remembering moments from their own children's early years. Every milestone, every family vacation, every ordinary Tuesday afternoon felt more precious now that they had spent time with children whose families treasured these simple moments even more deeply, because they understood how fragile and valuable they were. "You know what strikes me most about today?" Kate said as they prepared for bed. "Those children taught us that happiness isn't about having perfect circumstances. It's about finding joy and connection even when life is challenging." William nodded, thinking about how the children had laughed and played, despite their medical treatments. how they had supported each other through difficult days, and how they had welcomed strangers into their world with open hearts. That night, as they settled into bed, both Kate and William felt a sense of peace that had been missing from their lives for months. The children at the hospital had given them a gift that extended far beyond inspiration or perspective. They had reminded them about the power of presence, the importance of hope, and the strength that comes from facing challenges together. 3 months had passed since Kate and William's first joint visit to the children's hospital, and their lives had taken on a new rhythm. They had returned to the ward several times, each visit deepening their connection with the young patients and their families. What had started as a single hospital visit had evolved into something much more meaningful and personal. Emma had completed her treatment successfully and was preparing to go home. Her room, once filled with medical equipment, now buzzed with excitement as she packed her belongings and said goodbye to the staff who had become like family to her. When Kate and William arrived for what would be Emma's final day at the hospital, they found her surrounded by artwork, get-well cards, and the small treasures she had collected during her stay. "I made something special for both of you," Emma announced with the enthusiasm that had characterized every interaction they'd shared. She handed them a carefully wrapped package, her eyes bright with anticipation as they opened it together. Inside was a photo album that Emma had created with help from the hospital's art therapist. Each page contained pictures from their visits, drawings she had made, and short stories she had written about her royal friends. The final page contained a photo of all 3 of them together, with Emma's handwritten note. "Thank you for showing me that princes and princesses are real, and they have the biggest hearts of all." Kate felt tears forming as she read Emma's words. This child, who had faced months of treatment with such courage, was thanking them for what she had given them so much more than they had ever offered her. The simple wisdom and pure heart of this 7-year-old had taught them lessons about resilience and joy that would influence them for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, Tommy had become a different child from the scared, lonely boy they had first met. His mother had been able to arrange for extended stays at the hospital thanks to a new family support program that Kate and William had quietly helped establish. The program provided temporary housing for parents and siblings, allowing families to stay together during treatment periods. Tommy's transformation was remarkable to witness. He had become one of the ward's unofficial welcomers, helping new patients feel comfortable and showing them around the playroom. His natural leadership and empathy made him a favorite among both the younger and older children. The scared little boy who had once sat alone in the corner was now organizing games and storytelling sessions for other patients. "He's going to be okay," his mother told Kate during one of their visits, "not just medically but emotionally. This experience has shown him how strong he really is, and how much good he can do for others even when he's facing his own challenges." Sarah, the young artist who had been learning to paint with her non-dominant hand, had made incredible progress. Her artwork had evolved from simple exercises to complex, beautiful paintings that decorated the hospital corridors. She had started teaching other children her techniques, turning her personal challenge into an opportunity to help others discover their own creative abilities. Marcus continued to be the ward's superhero expert, but his collection had grown to include real-life heroes. He had started a scrapbook featuring the doctors, nurses, and support staff who took care of him, writing stories about their superpowers and how they helped children every day. His favorite story was about a night nurse who could make anyone feel better, just by sitting beside their bed and humming soft songs. As Kate and William spent more time at the hospital, they began to understand that their presence meant something different to each child and family. For some, they represented hope and the idea that important people cared about their struggles. For others, they were simply consistent visitors who listened to their stories and celebrated their small victories. The hospital staff had also become like extended family to Kate and William. They had learned about the incredible dedication required to care for seriously ill children, the emotional toll of losing young patients, and the profound joy of witnessing recoveries and breakthroughs. The doctors and nurses had taught them that healing was a team effort that included not just medical professionals but also family members, friends, and anyone willing to offer support and encouragement. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the ward's head pediatrician, had become a close friend and advisor to Kate and William. She helped them understand how their visits affected the children, beyond the obvious joy and excitement. When children see that people they admire care about them, It changes their entire outlook on their treatment, she explained. They start to see themselves as worthy of attention and care, not just as patients with problems to be solved. One afternoon, Kate and William arrived to find the playroom buzzing with unusual activity. The children were preparing a special presentation for them, something they had been working on for weeks with the help of the hospital's child life specialists. They had created a play about courage, with each child contributing their own interpretation of what it meant to be brave. Emma played a princess who discovered that her real power came not from her crown or castle, but from her ability to help others feel less afraid. Tommy portrayed a young knight who learned that being brave didn't mean never feeling scared, but continuing to move forward even when you were frightened. Sarah was an artist who painted pictures that could heal hearts, while Marcus played a storyteller whose tales gave people strength during difficult times. As Kate and William watched the performance, they realized that the children were telling their own stories through these characters. Each child had found a way to transform their medical journey into a narrative about growth, courage, and the power of human connection. The play wasn't just entertainment. It was a profound expression of how these young patients had learned to find meaning and purpose in their experiences. The performance concluded, with all the children joining hands and reciting a poem they had written together about friendship, hope, and the idea that everyone has the power to make someone else's day brighter. As they spoke the words in unison, their voices filled the playroom with an energy that seemed to touch everyone present. After the presentation, as Kate and William mingled with the children and their families, they reflected on how much their own lives had changed since that first hospital visit. The experience had taught them that real leadership often happened in quiet moments, away from cameras and public attention. It occurred in hospital rooms and playrooms where authentic connections were formed, and genuine care was offered without expectation of recognition or reward. The day that would forever change Kate and William's understanding of their purpose began like any other hospital visit. They arrived at the children's ward expecting to spend time with their young friends, participate in some activities, and return home with the warm feeling that always accompanied these meaningful encounters. Neither of them anticipated that this particular day would bring them face to face with the most profound test of their own emotional strength. Dr. Mitchell met them at the entrance to the ward, and immediately Kate noticed something different in her expression. The usual warm smile was still there, but it was accompanied by a gravity that suggested serious news was coming. "I wanted to speak with you both before you begin your visits today," Dr. Mitchell said gently, guiding them to a quiet corner. "We received some difficult news yesterday. Tommy's latest tests show that his condition has become more complicated. We're going to need to adjust his treatment plan significantly." Kate felt her breath catch in her throat. Tommy, the brave little boy who had become such a source of joy and inspiration, was facing new challenges just when everyone had hoped his journey was becoming easier. William reached for Kate's hand instinctively, both of them drawing strength from their connection as they processed this unexpected news. "How is he handling it?" Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's what's remarkable," Dr. Mitchell replied with a mixture of amazement and concern. "He's more worried about how his mother is coping than about his own situation. He's been trying to comfort other children who are upset about his news, and he's asking if he can still help welcome new patients to the ward." As they made their way toward Tommy's room, Kate and William prepared themselves emotionally for what might be a very different kind of visit. They had learned over the months that children often handled difficult news with more grace than the adults around them, but they also knew that today would require them to be stronger and more present than ever before. Tommy was sitting up in bed when they entered his room, surrounded by artwork from other children and letters from well-wishers. His mother sat beside him, her eyes red from crying, but her expression determined to remain strong for her son. When Tommy saw Kate and William, his face lit up with the same genuine joy that had characterized every interaction they had shared. "I was hoping you would come today," Tommy said, patting the bed beside him for them to sit down. "I wanted to show you something special." He reached for a notebook that had been lying on his bedside table and opened it carefully to reveal pages filled with his own writing and drawings. "I've been writing stories," he explained proudly. "Stories about all the children here and how brave they are. I want other kids who come to the hospital to read them and know that they can be brave too." Kate looked at the carefully written words and detailed illustrations, each story focusing on a different child's journey and the strength they had discovered within themselves. Tommy had transformed his own experience into a gift for future patients, creating something that would bring comfort and inspiration to other children facing similar challenges. "This story is about Emma," Tommy said, turning to a page featuring colorful drawings of a little girl surrounded by artwork. "I wrote about how she taught everyone that you can create beautiful things even when you're in a scary place. And this one is about Marcus and how he showed us that real superheroes are all around us." As Tommy continued sharing his stories, Kate felt overwhelmed by the depth of wisdom and compassion this young boy had developed through his experiences. Here was a child facing his own uncertain future, yet his focus remained on helping others and celebrating the courage he had witnessed in his fellow patients. "Tommy," William said softly, his voice thick with emotion, "these stories are incredible. You've captured something so important about what it means to be brave." Tommy looked up at William with eyes that held both innocence and profound understanding. "I learned it from watching everyone here," he said simply. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing good things for other people even when you are scared." The conversation continued for another hour, with Tommy sharing more of his stories and explaining his hopes that other children would find comfort in reading about the courage of young patients who had walked this path before them. His mother listened with a mixture of pride and heartbreak, amazed by her son's resilience while struggling with her own fears about his uncertain future. When it came time to visit other children on the ward, Kate and William carried Tommy's words with them. They found Emma in the art room, working on a farewell project for the hospital. She was creating a large mural that would remain permanently displayed, featuring all the children she had met during her treatment and the lessons they had taught her about friendship and hope. "I want every child who comes here to know they're not alone," Emma explained as she carefully painted details on each figure in the mural. "Every person in this picture found something special about themselves while they were here. I want new patients to see that and know they can find their special thing too." Sarah was in her room, teaching a new patient how to paint with watercolors. The young girl she was instructing had recently lost some mobility in her hands due to her condition, and Sarah was patiently showing her techniques that would work with her current abilities. The scene was a beautiful example of how the children supported each other through their individual challenges. Marcus had set up a storytelling corner in the playroom, where he was entertaining a group of younger patients with tales of everyday heroes. His stories featured janitors who had secret powers to make children smile, cooks who could create magical meals that made medicine taste better, and volunteers who possessed the ability to turn any day into an adventure. As the afternoon progressed, Kate and William found themselves witnessing something extraordinary. Each child they had come to know and love was actively working to support and encourage others. The hospital ward had become a community where young patients drew strength from each other and found ways to transform their own struggles into sources of help for their peers. The culminating moment came when all the children gathered in the main playroom for their regular afternoon activity time. Without any prompting from adults, they had organized themselves into a circle and were sharing stories about acts of kindness they had witnessed that week. Some told about nurses who had stayed late to comfort scared patients. Others described family members who had traveled long distances to visit. Several children talked about fellow patients who had helped them through difficult days. As Kate and William listened to these stories, they realized they were witnessing something profound. These children had created their own support system based on gratitude, compassion, and mutual encouragement. They had transformed a place associated with illness and treatment into a community built on love and hope. Then Tommy stood up in the center of the circle, his small frame somehow commanding attention from everyone in the room. "I want to say something," he announced with quiet confidence. The room fell silent as everyone focused on the brave boy who had become a source of inspiration for patients and staff alike. Kate and William felt their hearts racing as they sensed that something significant was about to happen. "I know some of you are worried about my new treatment," Tommy began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was facing. "And I know some of you are scared about your own treatments too. But I want everyone to remember something important." He paused, looking around the circle at each face before continuing. "We're all here together, and that means none of us has to be brave all by ourselves. When one person is having a hard day, the rest of us can be strong for them, and when we're scared, we can remember all the other children who were scared too but found their courage anyway." The emotional weight of Tommy's words settled over the room like a gentle blanket. Kate felt tears beginning to form as she watched this remarkable child address his fears head-on while simultaneously offering comfort to others who were struggling with their own challenges. "I don't know what's going to happen with my treatment," Tommy continued, his honesty both heartbreaking and inspiring. "But I know that whatever happens, I'm surrounded by the bravest, kindest people in the world. And that makes me feel like I can handle anything." As Tommy finished speaking, something magical happened. One by one, the other children stood up and moved toward him, creating a spontaneous group embrace that included patients, family members, and staff. Kate and William found themselves drawn into the circle, becoming part of a moment that transcended words or explanations. In that embrace, surrounded by these extraordinary children and their families, Kate and William experienced a surge of emotion that would change them forever. They realized that they had been privileged to witness courage in its purest form, love in its most selfless expression, and hope in its most powerful manifestation. The tears that came were not tears of sadness, but tears of overwhelming gratitude for being allowed to share in this sacred moment. They wept for the beauty of human resilience, for the privilege of knowing these remarkable young people, and for the profound lessons they had learned about what truly mattered in life.